chapter, what are we, chapter 4? Chapter 4 of Charlotte's Web. Chapter 4 is called Loneliness. The next day was rainy and dark. Rain fell on the roof of the barn and dripped steadily from the eaves. Rain fell in the barnyard and ran in crooked courses down into the lane where thistles and pigweeds grew. Rain spattered against Mrs. Zuckerman's kitchen window and came gushing down out of the downspouts. Rain fell on the back of sheep as they grazed in the meadows. When the sheep, tired of standing in the rain, they walked slowly up the lane and into the fold. Remember, last week we discovered that a fold was the sheep pen. Miss Danny, did you get breakfast, hon? And you don't want to eat it either? Y'all are freaking me out. I'm just kidding. I hope you guys are feeling okay. All right. Rain upset Wilbur's plans. Wilbur had planned to go out this day and dig a new hole in his yard. He had other plans too. His plans for the day went something like this. Breakfast at 6:30. Skim milk, crusts, middlings, bits of donuts, wheat cakes with a drop of maple syrup sticking to them, potato skins, leftover custard pudding with raisins, and bits of shredded wheat. Breakfast would be finished at 7. From 7 to 8, Wilbur planned to have a talk with Templeton, the rat that lived under his trough. Talking with Templeton was not the most interesting occupation in the world, but it was better than nothing. From 8 to 9, Wilbur planned to take a nap outdoors in the sun. From 9 to 11, he planned to dig a hole or a trench, possibly find something good to eat buried in the dirt. From 11 to 12, he planned to stand still and watch flies on the boards, watch bees in the clover, and watch swallows in the air. 12 o'clock, lunchtime, middlings, warm water, apple parings, meat gravy, carrot scrapings, meat scraps, stale hominy, the wrapper off a package of cheese. Lunch will be over at 1. From 1 to 2, Wilbur planned to sleep. From 2 to 3, he planned to scratch itchy places by rubbing up against the fence. From 3 to 4, he planned to stand perfectly still and think what it was like to be alive and to wait for Fern. At 4 would come supper. Skim milk, provender, leftover sandwich from Lurvy's lunchbox, prune skins, a morsel of this, a morsel of that, and a piece of baked apple, and a scrap of upside-down cake. Guys, I need you guys to be a little quieter, okay? Wilbur had gone to sleep thinking about these plans. He awoke at 6 and saw the rain. And it seemed as though he couldn't bear it. I got everything all beautifully planned out, and it has to go and rain, he said. For a while, he said, Jimmy, she's waiting politely in line. Okay? Because we're trying not to crush up against each other, right? I get it all beautifully planned out, and it has to go and rain, he said. For a while, he stood gloomily indoors. Then he walked to the door and looked out. Drops of rain stuck in his face. His yard was wet and was cold and wet. His trough had an inch of rainwater in it. Templeton was nowhere to be seen. Are you out there, Templeton? Called Wilbur. Still, there was no answer. Suddenly, Wilbur felt lonely and friendless. One day, just like another, he groaned. I'm very young. I have no real friends in the barn. It's going to rain all morning and all afternoon. And Fern won't come in such bad weather. Oh, honestly. And Wilbur was crying again for the second time in 2 days. At 6:30, Wilbur heard the banging of a pail. Lurvy was standing outside in the rain, stirring up breakfast. Come on, pig, said Lurvy. Wilbur did not budge. Lurvy dumped the slops, scraped the pail, and walked away. He noticed that something was wrong with the pig. Wilbur didn't want food. He wanted love. He wanted a friend, someone who would play with him. He mentioned this to the goose, who is sitting quietly in the corner of the sheepfold. Will you come over and play with me? He asked. Sorry, Sonny, sorry, said the goose. I'm sitting on my eggs, 8 of them. Got to keep them toasty warm. I have to stay right here. I'm no liberty gibbet. I do not play when there are eggs to hatch. I'm expecting goslings. Well, I didn't think you were expecting woodpeckers, said Wilbur bitterly. Wilbur next tried one of the lambs. Will you play with me? He asked. Certainly not, said the lamb. In the first place, I cannot get into your pen, and I am not old enough to jump over the fence. In the second place, I am not interested in pigs. Pigs mean less than nothing to me. What do you mean, less than nothing? Replied Wilbur. I don't think there is such thing as less than nothing. Nothing is the absolute limit of nothingness. It's the lowest you can go. It's the end of the line. How can something be less than nothing? If there were something less than nothing, then nothing would be nothing. It would be something. Even though it's just a little bit of something. But if nothing is nothing, then nothing has nothing, and it is less than it is. Oh, be quiet, said the lamb. Go play by yourself. I don't play with pigs. Sadly, Wilbur lay down and listened to the rain. Soon he saw the rat climbing down a slanting board that he used as a stairway. Will you play with me, Templeton? Asked Wilbur. Play, said Templeton, twirling his whiskers. Play? I hardly know the meaning of the word. Well, said Wilbur, it means to have fun, to frolic, to run, to skip, to make merry. I never do those things if I can avoid them, replied the rat sourly. I prefer to spend my time eating, gnawing, spying, and hiding. I'm a glutton, but not a merrymaker. There we see, there's the lamb talking to Wilbur. You guys can kind of see that in the back, the lamb talking to Wilbur in his pen. Mm-hmm. So what does it mean, I'm a glutton? I'm a glutton. What do we think that means? That's what Templeton describes himself as. So this is where we have to think back to what those words he said in the text were. Okay, he said, I prefer to spend my time eating, gnawing, spying, and hiding. I'm a glutton, but not a merrymaker. Okay? What do you think, Troy? Loud and proud, hun. Eating and hiding. Focus on that word eating. Eating, right? A glutton is where you just eat and eat and eat and eat and eat. And that's all you're really concerned about. You eat until you can't eat anymore, essentially. And merrymaker means, you know, the maker of merriment, the maker of fun and like playfulness and stuff. He doesn't like to do that. He just likes to eat and spy and hide. That's Templeton the rat. Right now, I'm on my way to your trough to eat your breakfast, since you haven't got enough sense to eat it yourself. And Templeton the rat crept along the wall and disappeared into a private tunnel that he dug between the door and the trough in Wilbur's yard. Templeton was a crafty rat, and he had things pretty much his own way. The tunnel was an example of skill and cunning. The tunnel enabled him to get from the barn to his hiding place under the pig trough without coming out into the open pen. He had tunnels that ran all the way over Mr. Zuckerman's farm, and he could get from one place to another without being seen. Usually, he slept during the daytime and was abroad only after dark. Wilbur watched him disappear into his tunnel. In a moment, he saw the rat's sharp nose poke out from underneath the wooden trough. Cautiously, Templeton pulled himself up over the edge of his trough. This was almost more than Wilbur could stand. On this dreary, rainy day, to see his breakfast being eaten by somebody else. He knew Templeton was getting soaked out there in the pouring rain, but even that didn't comfort him. Friendless, dejected, and hungry, he threw himself down in the manure and sobbed. Late that afternoon, Lurvy went to Mr. Zuckerman. I think there's something wrong with that pig of yours. He hasn't touched his food. Give him 2 spoonfuls of sulfur and a little molasses, said Mr. Zuckerman. Wilbur couldn't believe what was happening to him. When Lurvy caught him and forced the medicine down his throat, this was certainly the worst day of his life. He didn't know whether he could endure the awful loneliness any longer. Darkness settled over everything. Soon there were only shadows and noises of sheep chewing their cuds, and occasionally the rattle of a cow chain up overhead. You can imagine Wilbur's surprise when, out of the darkness, came a small voice he'd never heard before. It sounded rather thin, but pleasant. Do you want a friend? It said. I'll be a friend to you. I've watched you all day, and I like you. But I can't see you, said Wilbur, jumping to his feet. Where are you, and who are you? I'm right up here, said the voice. Go to sleep. You'll see me in the morning. And there's Wilbur, throwing himself into the manure pile and crying, feeling bad for himself. All right, that's the end of that chapter, which actually worked out just perfect. Just perfect. Okay, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, please try to finish up that breakfast very quickly because it needs to go bye-bye. It needs to go in the trash because second graders, you guys need to take out your Chromebooks. You need to get onto Wonders Reading and read. I have to find my book for second grade real quick so I can tell you what you need to read. What, Mr. Haiti? Sometimes you've got to check your charger and make sure that it's lit up with green. Because the other day my son had his plugged in and then we went home and we realized that his charger was not plugged into the wall right, and the charger box itself didn't have a green light on it, which meant it wasn't charging. Okay, so I will try to string a plug or something across for you. But the second graders, you guys need to go and read The Boy Who Cried Wolf. I also want you to read one of the leveled readers, like The Cat and the Mice. Mice, yeah, The Cat and the Mice. So you need to read The Boy Who Cried Wolf. I want you to read that a couple times. And then you need to read The Cat and the Mice. Excuse me, are you talking while I am talking? Then you're not doing what you need to be doing, okay? So second graders need to read The Boy Who Cried Wolf. You need to read that 3 times, and then you need to read one of the leveled readers, which is either The Cat and the Mice or The Dog and the Bone.